Jake Paul is on the record for saying that not only could he beat Canelo, but Canelo would need the judges just to make it a close fight. And when you hear a person speak in that kind of tone,
Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.,
I would knock him out.
Canelo Alvarez.
I would win by a split decision, but only because the judges would be in his favor.
What the hell?
it's more than just bravado. There's a real level of confidence with Jake Paul. And this conversation isn't about Jake Paul. This conversation is about the sport of boxing and how someone can go from here to here by having the proper confidence. And, the reality is this: during the day, I use this thing, and it's a lapel mic. It's just a cordless lapel mic that transitions my voice from sounding like shit to sounding like a golden eagle. You see, this is the thing about our sport. The sport has transitioned from mainstream America from the early 20s to the late 90s. And then a new thing came into play, which was the internet, and which was big brand deals. And so when I talk about these kind of things, we're not talking about one individual. We're talking about the landscape of a sport that literally grew wings. And it grew wings on the ground because once pay-per-view came into play, premium television took over. They understood the short-term benefit, but it was the long-term decipher of boxing. The decline of boxing on a mainstream level dropped the minute people got greedy in premium television and they wanted a new feather in their cap. And they took boxing and they made it what they wanted it to be. They wanted it to be perceived like they wanted it to be. The higher ups took advantage of the sport and used it for their own discretions. And then when they got done with it, that's when they decided to kick it to the curve. And now boxing flailed for many years. As a matter of fact, 2 decades, boxing has been flailing. And lo and behold, comes these individuals from Saudi Arabia who know that boxing needed funding. And the same way that our guy came out of nowhere with PBC and took it to the next level, to a place where they sued Al Heyman because he was paying too much. You see, a business is designed for the top level to get more capital so that they can use it and distribute it and grow. So the low man on the totem pole actually contributes the least to the funding of the company, more to the labor. And when you look at the fighter is the laborer. So he doesn't know what goes on in that room where the red tape is dispersed. And so that's what we are here to discuss. How did it go from being a mainstream? I mean, this was the economic fuel for the United States of America in the sports realm. When athletes came in, when we go back as far as Jesse Owens in the Olympics at the turn of the 20th century and got America gold. And then they figured out, here's a method that we could use this. Then they started to remember the patterns in our history. And so premium television did the exact same thing that some of these individuals, and we are talking about the powers that be. Let's just be straight about it. And they wanted to leverage things. And so that's why 98% of this country is enslaved. Okay. And when I say enslaved, I mean from a not a political standpoint, but a business standpoint. You're a denominator of the 1.7% of people who control all of the wealth. And if I'm going to be honest, the reality is that number, it never changes. And so in our understanding of educating you guys who are coming into the sport. And because premium television took boxing away from ABC, CBS, NBC, they took it away because they knew that the fighters would see the short-term benefit. And that's what happens. But when you take away something from mainstream television, that means eyes. And I'm going to give you an example. There's an individual, he's in a competitive sport, and he has 30,000 people that know about him. And then there's one that has 3,000 people that know about him. A lot of you guys are athletes, and that's about your range, 3,000 to 30,000. You can't kick dirt with that because no one knows you. Now, me, on the other hand, I knew the value of being mainstream television. So when I built the platform, what I thought about was what would give me leverage when I picked up the phone or whenever I reached out through email to anyone or even in the DMs. Because 98% of the people that I reach out to, 99.9%, excuse me, when I tap them on the shoulder, they have to respond because I'm bigger than they are. And that's all this is about. The first visual phase of this thing is all about what you see first when it comes to numbers. And so what I decided would be a great benefit, and I'm going to encourage each and every one of you athletes and the trainers, because I'm a former trainer. And now I coach people up to operate. And so in the sport, I mean, I'm talking about, we tap people on in conversations like ESPN, Top Rank Boxing, Kempton Hotels, like major stuff. I don't just talk to people. And that's a humble brag. If you have never heard of that, I'm humble, but I'm bragging because I did it. So thank me. And what I'm trying to do is explain to you what I came into the game for, because I had to look at what I had struggles with coming into the sport of boxing, being a coach, training people who were not in the sport. At the same time, I had to figure out how difficult it was to actually learn, even with great mentorship, like the Archie Moore family, Coach Kenny Adams, Coach Anthony Bradley, George Benton, Matthew Saad Muhammad. You look those names up and you'll understand. Coach Tyrone Soule, just legend after legend after legend, and had the opportunity to get one of the biggest compliments ever from Emmanuel Stewart about our training camp, basically being competent about boxing and wisdom and knowledge and money and understanding contractual agreements and knowing that boxing is a business and everybody who understands it can set themselves up for life. But let me go back. When I thought about how powerful leverage is, I realized that I could use it for good. But learning this game is a lot. You can't learn it on Instagram. You can't even learn it on YouTube. Now, if you're going to get education about this game, I had 3 of the biggest minds, and I got mentored by 4 of the most brilliant people in boxing ever. And 2 are more military. So there's that monster to have to deal with the discipline. And so even with all of that, when you are faced with scenarios in boxing, amateur at the elite and professionals at the elite, I was always confident before I ever did it. But when you get put in those situations, what I realized is that, damn, shit is hard. It's hard because your brain can't process something that it doesn't know. And so that's where I try to encourage the people who are on YouTube, Instagram, hopping around, TikTok, thinking you can learn from guys. Let me explain something. This is a demo. A demo shows that something exists. It does not teach you the how, when, or why. And the how, when, why is where you go into courses and understand theory, concepts, and then practical. That's where you get it until you can't get it wrong. When you're watching demos, you're not learning when not to do it. You're only seeing the actual technique, but you don't see it in scenario after scenario after scenario. And what happens when the dude collects your data and know that you're doing that and then is going to counter that? That's where it gets a little hairy. And this is what we are trying to prevent. Hence is one of the main reasons where I did a complete fundamental training book. This book is about, I don't know, 66 to 66, 76 pages of the basis of boxing, right? The ground foundation. And so what I was doing is figuring out all of the questions that I had, because I've been in over 40 championship training camps, meaning title. There were world titles, there were American titles, there were Brit titles, there were UFC titles, all kinds of titles equaling over 40. And I'm positive it's over 60, but I've just stopped counting after that. So the bottom line is this. Every time I've been in camp, I've written what I didn't know. So that's how I ended up with 30 books of complete Bible of boxing. I learned from the greatest minds. I had the greatest experiences, and I was baptized by fire. If you don't know what that means the shit was hard, and I was on the job, and I didn't have time to get it wrong. You get what I'm saying? And that's what a lot of you are reaching out to me about. They're like, hey, man, I got my second fight, and I'm like 0-1. Well, I've had my 7th fight, and I'm 5-2. I mean, I'm about to fight my 8th fight, and I don't want to lose that, because you know how boxing is. And so as I wrap all of this up and I'm talking about this, it's all about understanding the effervescence of having the power and leverage in boxing so that you can negotiate what you want out of this game. Because when I was coming up, boxing was the hottest sport. There was football was awesome. Baseball was super cool. They had all of the superstars in baseball back then. The Reggie Jacksons, the Pete Roses. It was just a lot of famous people, in track and field. There were the Carl Lewis, and it was just one epic level of individual after the next. And in football, there were the Franco Harrises and the Rocky Blyers and the Lynn Swans. I'm naming Steelers because I'm a Steelers fan. But lo and behold, as time crept on with boxing, it was Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran, these great fighters like Chavez Sr. And all of those guys built this monumental, legendary status and cachet. They were household names. They aren't like today's fighters. They aren't household names. So I realized a lot of the teachings got vanished. So they are all here, just so you guys know, because I got 4 of the best top 5 legendary minds in these books directly from the horse's mouth and experiences and camps and everything. So there's that. But I knew that now we lost the mainstream tube, which was ABC, NBC, CBS, and so on and so forth. How do we get that back? Well, we got more people on Earth. There's 4 billion people on Earth when I was a young kid. It's 8 billion people now. That means we have 2 Earths on this Earth compared to what I experienced growing up. So why are there not enough people watching? But a lot of people know boxing. A lot of people love boxing. But guess what? They don't get the experience of liking boxing. But Jake Paul single-handedly brought mainstream America back into the fold. So he has a role, regardless if you love him or hate him. He has a role, and the same way I have a role. And if anybody is in boxing, you have a role. Are you playing it or not is the question. So my role was to get that education. That's why I created an online school, and that's why I do direct one-on-one calls with all of my coaches because understanding it's important to educate and pass it down, not educate yourself and then hold it to yourself. I was asked by Dustin Poirier's coach, isn't it strange that you give away your knowledge to people? And I'm like, yeah, because I'm going to take this with me right to the grave. Like, it makes no sense. Because one thing about success is not success without a successor. That means your brain ends when you end, but it continues on because those guys gave me what they had up here. And I got my own experiences. And my job was to make sure that I was going to create a step-by-step process of developing athletes, and from a physical standpoint and a monetarily standpoint. Monetary is important. And I wanted those guys to know how to build careers so they don't have to rely on boxing when it's time to stop boxing. So the minute the fire leaves, you can leave it because you can go and do sports casting. You can go and be a lawyer. You can be a real estate investor. You can invest in people and companies and actually understand how to speak the language of financial literacy. And that's what I wanted to do, but I wanted to make it cool because I grew up, I was a cool guy. I'm no scrub. So I understood that how do you make that cool? You make it cool by putting people in front of it and you're teaching it. And that's what I'm doing. Now you got to remember, I was challenged before. A lot of you have heard this story when one of the guys that I was training, he's a billionaire. And he said to me, his company's on the Dow Jones. So, there's that. And he asked me, I know you're great at what you do. But he know I wanted more. And he said, but how do you let them know? And I was like, and marketing wasn't even a conversation. I didn't even understand it back then. This is over 2 decades ago. I didn't know what marketing was. I didn't know it was just telling people what you do and then showing them. And then, hey, what happens if I go through that? Well, here's what'll happen to you. That's marketing. Like, just get good at that. Now I've gotten to a point where it was difficult at one time, and now I can say it. If you tell me what you do, I could tell you exactly what the outcome for that person that you want to work with should be, so that you can say it to them. Because in your head, you understand that that's what needs to be said. But in reality, you don't have enough reps under your belt to say it right. And so that's where we are with that. And now you got this kid who's not only coming to bring numbers, like I'm bringing numbers, my consistent 30 million, and it's dropped as low as 12 to 15 because sometimes, the algorithm has its own agenda. They have their own agenda. My content never stops being good. Then I put out great, and then I educate. And so I have to always make sure that I don't fall below a certain line, because I think of myself as a network television, and to be doing 30 to 40 million views a month, that's pretty darn good. That's just on one platform. I'm doing YouTube too. So my YouTube is cranking up and cranking up. I got an entire team. So Jake's bringing numbers, but Jake's also showing you exactly what numbers do. He did it with Clarissa. Now she got a channel.
He said something that stuck with me long for it. He said something, and I haven't told him this. I'm going to go ahead and tell him.
Okay, tell him.
That man said the reason he's able to come from YouTube and make all this money is because he had 1 million subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah.
Do you know how all the hard work I put in it, and then you gonna tell me that all I have to do was go to YouTube?
Like, no.
And then all my YouTube fans would follow me to boxing?
No.
And they would fill up these arenas to come see me. It was like he basically gave you a shortcut, but he's making money off of it. And that's something right now that women's boxing is fighting for. It's like equal pay, equal rights, equal money, equal fight time. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, bruh, I'm at 90,000 subscribers now.
I'm making sure that our guys who come up under our banner have. So what is it that you got to think about now? Why are we getting numbers? Because we're becoming our own networks. This is the era of individuals being the networks. People start subscribing to people now and not apps. And so that's where we get back the ABC, the CBS, the NBCs of the world. And we're building boxing back to a mainstream level. And ABC, which is the amateur boxing, they want to use people who have big platforms. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because you have to understand how important it is to build your pages up. It starts with as simple mathematics. It's simple mathematics. Get yourself 100,000 people first. Start out, get your first 1,000, get your first 10,000. But whatever you did to get to 10,000, the same way I help our guys get those numbers is the exact same thing you need to do to get that. And if you don't, use the Launch Pro to launch your page, to launch your social media narrative. Because if you do, that means you're contributing to the sport and you're learning how to leverage your game. But here's how aware that the LBC is, ABC Boxing. Check it out.
In December, we got a call from a consulting firm that said they'd been hired by USA Boxing to identify how to reinvigorate interest in amateur boxing, and they had recommended to USA Boxing to partner with Jake Paul and MVP. And now there's a much bigger, broader partnership that's going to roll out that's going to reinvigorate youth interest in boxing from 3, 4, 5, 6 years old and up.
And you see, that's Jake and those guys. They're getting those calls, having the conversations. And right now, it's important that you guys take you understand, if you want to build your amateur team, your amateurs know that people are teaching their athletes how to market the same way that there are 9-year-olds that become millionaires because they got YouTube channels. Is the exact same reason why there are going to be more main event YouTube fighters than there are main event guys who went to amateur boxing. Amateur boxing now will require you to know how to market your athletes.
When does Jake Paul want to actually retire? Is it when you win a world title and then you're moving on to the next step?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be after winning a world title. I'm going to try and figure out how to fight in the 2028 Olympics.
Dude, bro.
And win gold, and then I think I'd retire.
Special shouts out to Nykel, who's blowing up. You'll go to his page on Instagram, and he's with everybody. And the reason why that is because he's doing what you're going to need to do. So this conversation was about silver lining and boxing. So when we think about it, what do you think about where boxing is? You feel like it's on the rise since Saudi has come in with Riyadh season? Are you really, really looking through when Canelo fights Terrence Crawford? Because behind that fight, there's a fight that's there that was not on a radar before.
Hey guys, don't pay attention in anything. In this fucking YouTuber, I just fight real fighters. Don't fucking around with Canelo.
And it's because men lie, women lie more, numbers don't. When you got numbers, everything is possible. It's not everything is possible, everything is probable. So get your numbers up. If you don't know how to do that, then follow for more. But until next time, continue blessings at Godspeed. And just remember, you either want to get down or lay down. But when you want to get that smoke and reach the top, you got to have all 3 pillars. You need the science. That's what you're learning. You need to promote that shit. That's how you get it out to the world so people know you do it. And then you need to duplicate yourself. And that's all that is. And that's making sure you got videos out there talking that smoke. And until next time, continue blessings. For all of you guys who are really, really fired up, make sure you follow us because we're going to bring you that smoke. As the bigger fights approach, you'll see great conversations. We don't get into all of that ranting and raving about social in the world of just going out here as journalists. What we teach is boxing, the business of boxing, that is. So Coach Bradley signing out. Until next time, I'll see y'all soon in the winner's circle. And if you're over on Instagram, go join our Instagram broadcast. The winner's circle is fire. We keeping smoke up in there. If you want to make sure that you're trying to teach your athletes how to market, make sure you type the word launch so you can launch their careers the right way. And I'll see you next time. Same bat station at Master Boxing. Peace.